seriously popular.
Welcome to the Life of Bryony, the podcast where we chat about all the messy, beautiful and challenging parts of life. Today, I am talking to none other than Millie Mackintosh, former star of Made in Chelsea, author, and now an advocate for living a life free from booze.
I need to be responsible for this other human, this baby. Like, it was like, I'm a mother now. How can I act like this? And I just remember crying on the baby's head and like pumping and being like, this is awful.
She joins me to talk about her book, Bad Drunk. So if you're curious about quitting, this is well worth a listen. So today is, if you're listening to this on the day that this podcast is released, which I'm sure you all are, it's apparently Blue Monday, which obviously we know is a load of bollocks. However, let's acknowledge that we are now at that stage of January where everything just feels quite hard. It's like day 829 of January. And I'm feeling a bit mad. Low.
Do you ever see that meme on the internet? It's a very common meme. I'm doing this thing called January, where you get through every day of January. Have you ever seen that one?
That's what I'm doing. I put something up on my Instagram actually on Friday, which was like, this too shall pass, but what the fuck?
But pass to what?
But in the meantime, what the fuck? And that's genuinely, I think, just very much my brain has been this week not that kind to me. And I think that's because I'm like at the end of a big work project. There's been a lot going on in life, which, you know, I spoke about the other week.
Yeah.
Grief and work and just adulting, I guess. So this week I've felt really, really mad. I just believe that everyone hates me, that all the work I do is useless. My head is saying these things to me, which are like if I heard someone say these about a friend, I'd be like completely shocked, right? But the bonus, the upside of this is that I'm now at a stage in my recovery. Is that sounding like a wellness wanker? I'm now at the stage in my recovery where there's another voice in my head which comes out and is like, but is that true, Bryony? Is that true? Are all those things that you're saying, are they true? Are you really a piece of shit the world revolves around?
I like that fact you're checking yourself earlier now as well. You're being your own therapist, which
I'm being my own therapist, which is a lot cheaper than going to see an actual therapist
and
every time I hear a bad thing in my head. But anyway, can I tell you, Jonathan, what happened yesterday? I was on the phone to someone and I'd gone to CrossFit because that was going to cheer me up. And I was walking back and I was on a work phone call and I was standing outside Gales, my local Gales, which is like where I spend a lot of free time.
Wouldn't it be great if they sponsored the podcast?
It would be,
Come on, Gales.
I was standing outside Gales on the phone and there was this woman who had just finished a run and she was having her cup of coffee and she sort of tapped me on the shoulder and showed me her phone. Bear in mind, I was on the phone, so I couldn't like ring off or whatever. And she showed me her phone and she showed me that she was listening to this podcast.
Oh my God, that's so nice.
She was listening to the Life of Bryony.
The world is tiny if you think about it.
Yeah, she's our one listener. And she said... And she said, I love this show.
Great.
And I was like, thank you. And I blew her a kiss. And I wanted to just say to that woman,
that hard actor that we hired,
I just wanted to thank her.
Yeah.
It really, really made a massive difference to my to my mood and my week. And it sort of brought me back into reality of my life, which is that like, it's all okay. Yeah. I'm okay. It's all okay. I'm quite lucky in the grand scheme of things. And but it was also just such a nice, generous thing to do.
Yeah, it is actually.
Because like, and I think we don't tell each other enough. I'm quite effusive. Like, if I like something that someone's done, I tell them again and again and again. And they're a bit like, okay, back off, lady, back off. Let me get a restraining order. But I realised that lots of people aren't like that, you know. And actually, I think if you if you like something, if something has given you joy that another person has done, like just tell them.
Yeah. And you know what? You don't have to tell them then and there as well, because you can always, if you're thinking about them, having maybe met them a couple of days ago beforehand, you can always just text them and go, hey, you know, that thing you said, blah, 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 about work, well done. You know, you can, it's never a wrong time.
That's almost more impactful.
Yeah, I think so too.
After the event. Mm-hmm. It's like dropping a bit of joy into everyone's day. So I wonder if today, basically, we should all just send someone we appreciate a note telling them why we appreciate them. Jonathan, I don't think you're going to do that. You just don't strike me as the kind of person that would send someone a loving message.
I think sometimes in my friend group, particularly with my close friends, if I did that, they would be worried I was dying. They would be like, what is up?
I have sometimes tried to send you messages going, oh, I really like working with you. Oh, it's been a real, I'm really enjoying. And it's just like tumbleweed blows through the WhatsApp chat.
And on the flip side, I said to you recently, I don't like giving you too many comments because it's like giving a dog too many treats, which is so insulting and so rude. Actually, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take the podcast to apologize for that comment. So I think you're right, though. I think it's a nice thing to do. But I think sometimes people feel a bit awkward.
Yeah, but it's a bit like when you're a kid, like at school and in the playground, and the boy that pulls your pigtails obviously is in love with you.
Yeah, he's the one thinking about you.
So you mean you're in love with me, Jonathan?
I'm always meanest to the people I like the most.
I don't think that you're in love with me.
You never know.
What is... Dax, are you?
Tracking all our cars on Carvana Value Tracker on all our devices? Yes, Kristen, yes, I am.
Well, I've been looking for my phone for...
In Dax's domain, we see all. So we always know what our cars are worth.
All of them?
All of them. Value surge, trucks up 3.9%.
That's a great offer.
I know. Sell?
Sell.
Track your car's value with Carvana Value Tracker today.
Yeah, sure thing. Hey, you sold that car yet?
Yeah, sold it to Carvana.
Oh, I thought you were selling to that guy.
The guy who wanted to pay me in foreign currency, no interest, over 36 months? Yeah, no. Carvana gave me an offer in minutes, picked it up, and paid me on the spot. It was so convenient.
Just like that.
Yeah?
No hassle.
None.
That is super convenient.
Sell your car to Carvana and swap hassle for convenience. Pickup fees may apply.
Now listen, guys, if you are loving the conversation so far, or even just mildly enjoying it, good news, there are 2 episodes every week. Hit follow now so I can be part of your weekly routine. I really enjoyed chatting to Millie. We've got friends in common but had never met before, but I felt it's like I do when I speak to other people who describe themselves openly as bad drunks or alcoholics. Always immediately you get to the nitty-gritty. You know, you go to a level that can take years with other people, you know, and I really loved talking to Millie, and I really appreciate her candor. We touched on her early struggles, motherhood, and actually the immense joy she's found in sobriety, which people don't talk about enough, frankly. We think that it's going to be boring, dull, our lives are going to be over, but actually they're just beginning. A quick note, this episode includes discussions of sexual assault early on. We've added links to resources in the show notes if this is a subject that has affected you. For now, enjoy my chat with Millie. This book, I just want to start by saying thank you. It has the best title of any sobriety book, Bad Drunk.
Yeah, I was a bad drunk.
Me too.
And it was like this dirty secret that I had to kind of try and hide from the world. I was so ashamed of how I acted when I was drunk. It was like just the worst thing ever to admit it. And then once I did say it out loud, like, I am a bad drunk, I need to stop drinking, it's really freeing, just owning it, being like, yeah.
But also realising that, like, some people just are. I always remember when I met my husband, I remember we went to this wedding.
Yeah, weddings for me.
I mean, weddings anyway, aren't they?
A wedding, yeah.
Like, the drinks receptions where they don't give you any food. For hours on end. And I remember just making a complete, well, I don't remember, I blacked out. Like you, my drinking was usually to black out. And I remember the next day, my husband, he was then my then boyfriend, I remember him saying to me, Bryony, you really can't handle your drink. You're really, you have a problem with alcohol. You can't drink. And I remember being so ashamed and so horrified. And I sort of like went into defensive mode and was like, how dare you say that?
Yeah.
You know, but it is true, that thing of like, oh, you're a bad drunk. You can't handle your drink.
And you're judged.
Yeah. As if it's like a moral...
Yeah, like a choice.
Yeah, as if... Yeah, exactly. Like, people who can drink and hold their drink are sort of morally superior to those of us who can't.
That is definitely a thing.
So this book, it's essentially your experience with alcohol. The subtitle of it is, it's Bad Drunk, How I Found My Freedom from Alcohol and You Can Too. And you've written it with the wonderful Dr. Ellie Cannon. So it's very much, each chapter is you talking about your experiences, and then Ellie comes in and gives the sort of expert advice and picture of what alcohol does to your body and your brain. I just want to start by asking you, how do you feel now? We're meeting like the week before it comes out. I've written a book about my getting sober myself and my own kind of escapades with alcohol. And I know how exposing that can feel, you know, like it's like we have to relive that shame of being the bad drunk again. How are you feeling right now?
Feel a bit like, you know, when you have one of those dreams and you're naked in public, it feels a bit like that, like really exposing. But I feel really good about putting the book out. So it's kind of like feeling the fear and doing it anyway.
Yeah.
I am nervous for that initial push, just like knowing it's out there, people are reading it, people are reading such personal things that have happened to me, but remembering why I've done the book with the aim to help people like us who struggle with alcohol misuse, addiction, whether it's, you know, minor or major. And also it's felt like such a cathartic experience writing the book that at one point I considered not releasing it for like lots of different reasons. And then I was like, I feel like I can't move on from this period until I actually just like release it.
There is a lot of honesty in it, but I think that's crucial to it. Like, you can't write a book about being a bad drunk or having a problem with alcohol if you don't detail the experience of what it's like.
I wanted to really go there.
And you have gone there. And I kind of wanted to, I mean, you say this yourself about you when you want to go back to like 14-year-old Millie and take her in your arms and go, oh my God, you know, like, I just want to say I'm really sorry for the things that happened to you, you know, because but it really resonated with me. There's this episode in your life that you write about really clearly, and it's when you're 14 and it's one of the first times you drink. Do you want to talk about what happened, or do you want
I can say it. I've done a lot of therapy around this. So I really spent a lot of time deciding if I was comfortable to put it in the book, and I felt that I'd done the healing that I needed to do, and that I was in a place where I felt safe to tell the world about it. And also it made sense for me to include this bit of the book because it was so linked to my drinking, and when I first started drinking and when it started going wrong from this quite young age of 14 when I was at a party. And sadly, this has happened to so many people that I know, something similar. I think it's like 1 in 4 people has been sexually assaulted. And it happened to me when I was 14. And it was the first time that I got like blackout drunk and passed out. And I've just carried so much shame for so many years. But it's not something that I should feel any shame about. And it wasn't even until in the last 5 years that I actually realised I'd been assaulted.
Right.
Because for so long I believed it was my fault.
Right, because you'd been drinking.
Yeah.
So you came to and there was someone on top of you.
Yeah. So I'd passed out at a party and I was put in a bedroom, like whatever, sleep it off. I think my parents were on their way to collect me because I was 14. There were adults there, but they weren't kind of watching really what was going on. And I woke up with a boy on top of me, and he like undone my clothes, and it kind of was a real shock just to be like figuring out like what is going on and how can this be happening to me? Like I haven't said this is okay. Like it was happening when I wasn't conscious. And then he was very unpleasant to me as I pushed him off.
Right.
And my parents collected me and I didn't tell them. I was just too embarrassed. And then, I went back to school the next day and didn't tell anyone and just like buried it down and blamed myself. And then the kind of saddest bit about it for me is that I didn't I think, okay, if you drink a lot, you're vulnerable and you need to look after yourself and be responsible for your own like health and safety, and you should not. It wasn't my fault. And I wish I'd realised that, but it also, what I continued to do was get in that situation.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing, isn't it? It's like two things can be true at the same time, that it's not your fault. And like, I guess, okay, if we think logically about what would, when I say quote unquote normal person, I mean someone that doesn't have a drinking problem. If one weekend they'd gone out and got so blackout drunk that they had been vulnerable to a predator, let's put it that way. Yeah. They probably wouldn't the next weekend go out and get blackout drunk again. You know, they'd learn from that experience.
And
again,
like,
it's not to put any blame on. This resonates with me because the same thing happened to me, you know, like numerous times, you know, like, and there are people out there who know more about what happened to me while I was drinking than I do still, because I was in blackout.
Same.
And I'd come to, I remember always coming to on a staircase. And a bloke being there, or
like coming to in someone's bed and being like, how did I get here?
I remember waking up in my own bed and there were like stains on my coat, you know, like when I say stains, I mean nasty, you know, and thinking I have no idea how that got there. I have no idea what happened, and still to this day. And that's something I have to just make peace with, you know. But it's having that total disregard for your own safety, because I guess the pursuit of blackout and numbing yourself is more important than your own safety.
Now I have daughters as well. It's so scary to think about them being teens, them drinking, and them, you know, being in a dangerous situation. And I will have to have the conversation with them when they're old enough and tell them what happened to me. And I hope that it will, you know, act as a bit of a warning, and that I can set a good example to them by not drinking. Not that I expect them to never drink, but just understand the risks.
So have your parents read this? Or?
So they have read it and they are supportive, but it's really forced me to have some very uncomfortable conversations because I hadn't told them ever
about these things.
And so I had to sit them down and talk to them about the sexual assault, and that was really painful for all of us. And I think for me and my mum, I meant to touch on it in the book, we were quite separate in my teens. I think this dynamic often happens with girls and their mums. And I didn't tell her things. I was quite, you know, I kind of wanted to rebel against them, against my school, against just rules in general. And I had a lot of anger. Didn't know where to direct it. I mean, I directed it at myself, but also outwardly and at them. And now I'm trying to bridge the gap and now be able to have those uncomfortable conversations that we didn't have then. But it's just like this ugly area of my life that like we never talk about as a family because it was painful for them as well. But the book has made us have conversations that we should have had a long time ago. And I'm grateful for that.
I think sometimes as well, it's like I've definitely got to that stage in my life where I realise that also sometimes it's okay if people don't understand.
I think they don't love that I'm doing the book because it's talking about topics that for their generation, you know, it's not really something you talk about. You have a drinking problem. It's like, why would you put that on a book cover?
I remember when I wrote, by the way, I'm very grateful that you recommend Glorious Rock Bottom at the back of it. And when I wrote Glorious Rock Bottom, which was about my experiences of getting sober, and obviously I had to give it to my parents to read before it went out. And my mum sent me a message and was like, I really don't think that you should allow this book to be published. And, you know, like her reasoning was, this isn't like any judgment against my mum. It was just her reasoning was like, you have been really vulnerable and raw. And some of these things are awful that happened. And I remember being like, that reaction is why I have to publish this book. Because whether we like it or not, these things happen. They happen to women, they happen to men as well. They happen to, you know, pointedly mothers, you know. And either we want people to get better and we want people to live lives where they are not a slave to alcohol,
where they're free.
Or we don't. And if we want that to happen, we have to be honest. And like for me, I mean, I've said this so many times and, you know, if you're listening and you've heard this, but I feel like it can't be said enough. I remember when I had to go to rehab, and I remember we had these sessions where we had to talk about the kind of the worst things that had happened to us while we were drinking. And she said, shame dies when you expose it to the light. And I think it is true, because once you get it out there, like you just hit on that, where you feel like once this is out, it can't hurt you anymore.
Hurt me. Yeah. Like for like all of my 20s, I was like so desperate for no one to find out.
Yeah.
That, you know, if I got pictured like hammered, I was like, oh, this is like the worst thing ever. Like, I don't want anyone to know that I was so ashamed.
Well, your 20s were, you know, made in Chelsea.
Yeah.
You were married to a rap star.
Yeah.
You were sort of in the papers, you know, like you were a regular feature. And you really do touch on that. I found it fascinating that, you know, you're incredibly honest. You talk about a lot of the time you were, you know, self-medicating with sedatives, with Xanax.
That was something I was quite scared to put in the book. And I was like, is it too vulnerable? Is it too far? But it's real and it's honest, and actually, as well as it went hand in hand with the drinking. It kind of became a crutch that was like, I needed it to cope with my drinking.
Yeah.
And it was really toxic. And I mean, it's so damaging for your brain and so addictive as well.
Again, that's the madness of it, isn't it? It's that thing of like, to cope with the drinking, we don't stop.
Yeah, that would be the obvious thing. Just remove the alcohol. Don't then need another thing.
No, but I need another drug to be able to enable me to cope with this thing that I need. It's like, I mean, I was the same, but my drug was, instead of Xanax, was cocaine, because I needed to be able to continue to drink. But it's just stop.
Yeah, but for me, it was like the next day, it was like, if I'm hungover and I've got to function or I've got to go out drinking again, Xanax would allow me, you know, to tone the anxiety down enough so that I could face whatever I had to do.
Which often was very kind of like high profile.
Yeah, like going to a, you know, massive event or, you know.
Walking a red carpet. You talk about you got alcohol poisoning twice.
Yeah, I remember actually being in hospital when I was like in my late teens, and maybe like with a group of uni friends. I wasn't at uni, but you know how they party in uni towns, like it's just like so much binge drinking.
You talk about, I mean, this is the kind of again, I just want you to know, Millie, I am not saying any of this with any judgment whatsoever, because I mean, we could, the two, you know, like I could.
We would have had a riot if we'd gone on, if we'd had a night out. We might not even be sitting here today. Like,
no, we might have died.
We wouldn't remember.
We wouldn't remember. We may have
We could have
gone on a night out together, and it's lost to the universe. Do you ever have this thing where I get people come up to me and they go, "Oh, Bryony,
all the time.
I had the wildest night out of my life with you," and I'm like, I don't remember who you are.
People constantly come up to me and they're like, Millie, how are you? And I no clue. I think it's also my ADHD, like awful like memory for names and faces. But I get this really uncomfortable feeling if they start saying things like, you know, it was quite wild and we were there, and I'm like, oh God, I just don't remember. And that does make the shame come up for me. It's like I'm an adult and there's another human telling me about an experience they had with me, and I have no recollection of it.
But talk about that, because I think that is the shame. Like, I just know there will be people listening right now who absolutely get that. And just as you said that, like the shame came up for me on like, I mean, it happens less often now, but like,
I have dreams, like nightmares, drinking dreams, and I'm always so relieved when I wake up. It's like, and then I in the dream, I feel the shame because I've had a drink.
Drunk again.
Yeah, because I've drunk again.
How do mine always manifest? I have these dreams where I have drunk, but not only have I drunk, but I've never actually stopped drinking. And the whole way through, I've like every couple of months, I've gone on these binges, but claimed I'm sober.
I actually have had these dreams as well, and it's like everyone's going to find out that you're a massive fake, and that you're like and pretending to be sober, and you're actually drinking. Oh my God, this is like the worst feeling ever. Then I wake up and I'm like, oh my God, thank God it wasn't real. Yeah, I've had that as well.
I remember someone saying to me though, actually I was talking about this with we've got a mutual friend how I'm really grateful for those dreams now because they are a way to remind me of how awful drinking was without actually picking up a drink.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to kind of reframe the kind of...
Yeah, no, it's a really good reminder. And then when you get the relief, you're like, oh, this is great. Like I'm not hungover.
Yeah.
I don't have any of that shame. I can just like let go of it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm still quite new into this. It's been like 2.5 years. So the memories of my bad drunk behaviour like still feel quite raw, some of them, and some of the ones that are in the book. When I was writing it, those feelings of shame were like washing over me. But when I started writing the book, I felt really nauseous, like the first day. I was like, there's something wrong with my stomach. And then I realised it was just an emotional thing. It was like bringing everything like up to be healed.
Yeah.
There was literally like retching, but it was just like energy, just like waiting to come out, be released.
That needed to be, probably.
That needed to be.
You talk about this event in your career where you were asked to the Amphar Gala. Is it in Cannes?
Yeah.
You basically end up having to be signed for like a parcel.
Oh God, it's so embarrassing.
Sorry, I don't know.
No, it's okay. Like I put it in the book, so like it's
Could
okay.
you talk us through this very embarrassing moment?
Okay.
No, but I think because it
outwardly, like people would just see the pictures and have no clue. Obviously.
Here's glamorous Millie Mackintosh on the red carpet in Cannes, living her best life.
Yeah, and what you don't see
is afterwards
the aftermath.
The organisers realising you were so drunk, and because it was so exclusive, you couldn't bring your like agent with you.
Yeah.
So they had to call your agent and say,
We've got a situation. We need to get Millie out of there.
Kick her out of it.
Yeah.
And they had to basically put you in a car to take you back.
And I was unconscious.
But the thing that really, this other bit of it that really struck me and I really related to was that you had this thing in your diary for ages, and it was like this big glittering thing that you were kind of like,
wow, like I felt like so lucky to have been invited.
And then just as it's about to happen, you fuck it up.
Yeah. Such a self-sabotage. This is
like totally
the
classic.
ultimate self-sabotage.
Yeah. But that's so relatable. I think of the amount of times that I like had a big thing and I was like, can't go out. And then the night before I'd go out and get completely off my tits and wouldn't.
Which is the worst thing you can do.
But that is a very sort of bad drunk behaviour.
Because it's like the anxiety of the event, the fear of, it's the imposter syndrome. I'm not good enough to be there. And then acting out to just, like, okay, well, let's make it easier. I'll just try and self-sabotage to the point that you can't even go.
Yeah.
And then actually still going and it just self-sabotaging at a public event. Oh God, yeah, it's really embarrassing when I think back to it. I mean, my saving grace was that there was no pictures of me being put into a taxi like a parcel, but maybe, I don't know, maybe that if there had been, maybe would I have stopped sooner? I don't know. There was a couple of events. That was the worst one, I would say, but there was definitely a couple of like work events where I got really pissed and, was just not responsible. But that one, it's just remembering like that, the hours spent like with the stylist finding the perfect outfit, wearing this couture dress, like, literally being on a diet for like a month so I could fit in the dress. Like, just like all this pressure to feel like I was good enough to be there. And then it ending so badly. Yeah, I have a lot more compassion for that girl now as well. I feel like sad for her.
Let's talk about that girl because, you are not the only person from that Made in Chelsea cohort who has since come out to say, I have a problem with alcohol and I've had to stop drinking. Yeah. In fact, there seems to be more of you that have done that than haven't. Do you know what I mean?
It's not that surprising.
And, what I want to ask you is like, when you look back on that time, I mean, you're very magnanimous about the whole thing. You're like, you had some great times and it was great fun. But was there a kind of duty of care there that was, when you look back and look at that girl, you think, oh my God, I can't believe that she was parachuted into that kind of situation.
Yeah. I wouldn't normally drink much on set because there was one or two times quite in the first season where I was a bit like tipsy on camera and I like watched it back and was like, oh God, that was like not good, like don't do that again. But there was one episode which was very emotional for me where I had been told something on camera that was very upsetting to do with someone that I was in love with at the time, and then I found out they'd like cheated on me, and like I like walked out the scene crying and I was like, I want to leave, I want to go home. And we were filming in the middle of nowhere in the countryside and they were like, you can't go, like we don't have any cars here, or like, they just like, they were like, you need to stay here until everyone leaves at like this time. And I was just like, I just can't be here, I need to go. And I was put in a room with a producer and a bottle of champagne and like coaxed into staying and then going and filming another scene.
Wow.
Whilst like, being filled with Dutch courage.
And like being told that your boyfriend at the time had cheated on you, like, so there's a sort of like emotional manipulation. There's so many different layers of manipulation going on there.
Yeah, but it made great TV, but I was not okay. I remember when I left filming that evening and I went back to London and my anxiety was through the roof. I was really struggling with my mental health at that time.
I'm so sorry.
I think there must be a better duty of care now. I wasn't doing therapy. I wasn't really as aware of anxiety and my mental health at that time. But looking back now, I know that I did have a lot of anxiety, and I was starting to have panic attacks then.
Yeah, and I suppose perhaps it just felt normal.
Yeah.
I always think, I look back at some of the situations, you know, like at the time I didn't realise they were dysfunctional because they were my normal.
Yeah, and you're used to constantly living in that state of hypervigilance. Yeah.
It's a lot.
It was a lot. The show started airing and watching all the tweets come in.
Right. So, yeah, let's talk about that, because that's another level of like strangers on the internet telling you what they think of you.
And I would sit there with like an enormous glass of wine and watch the tweets come in and just read like every single one whilst, like, you know, depending on what I just read, like glugging it or like...
Yeah.
And just, you know, during the episode would easily have drunk like a bottle.
And did it ever occur to you not to read the tweets?
It was kind of like a sick, like...
Torture.
Like,
I get that.
I couldn't not look. It was like constantly like cutting myself.
But I guess it's like putting a glass up against a door and hearing your name and then being like, I'm not going to listen.
Yeah.
Like, of course we would all listen, right?
And there'd be nice ones as well.
But did you pay any attention to the nice ones, Millie? Or
why are we like
did you focus entirely on the negative ones?
Those, the ones that like stay and leave the scars are always the nasty ones.
I feel like you're a survivor and you've kind of come through, and I wondered how you deal now, because you've got like a lot of followers. You know that you must have developed some sort of like coping skills to be able to block some of it out. You know, like you probably wouldn't.
I have it a lot more now. I realise that in order for something someone else says to hurt me, I have to believe it to be true.
Yes.
So that really helps. And also realising other people's opinions of me are not my business.
I remember someone, when I first got sober, saying to me, they were like that, they said, what other people think of you is none of your business. And I was like, I think you'll find it's my only business. But actually, when you stop and you think about it, it's so empowering, because it's like, people can have opinions of me.
Yeah, but that's for them, and it's not personal.
No, it never is.
It's not about you. Their reaction to you is all about them. That makes it easier remembering that.
Wow. What's up? I just bought and financed a car through Carvana in minutes.
You? The person who agonized 4 weeks over whether to paint your walls eggshell or off-white bought and financed a car in minutes?
They made it easy. Transparent terms, customizable down and monthly. Didn't even have to do any paperwork.
Wow.
Hey, have you checked out that spreadsheet I sent you for our dinner options?
Finance your car with Carvana and experience total control. Financing subject to credit approval.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
So your personal life has been always quite public.
Yeah, from like 2021.
Yeah, and how old are you now?
35.
Wow, so that's like all of your adult life, basically, has been on television or in the newspapers. Professor Green,
Stephen,
he saw you on the cover of a magazine and called up the editor
that classic,
to get your number. This is how most of us date.
The classic way of meeting someone. It was a whirlwind. I was 23 when I got engaged, married at 24. We were just such different people then.
That's why people were fascinated with the story, weren't they? Because it was like posh girl from Chelsea. And
I was kind of running away from Made in Chelsea.
Right.
And I ran to someone that was from a completely different area of London, a completely different background, a completely different industry. But yeah, at the time, I wasn't really aware that I was escaping. But looking back now with hindsight, it was definitely running away from my problems and creating new problems. And I think we were both not in a great place, and we were kind of mirrors to each other's traumas. And it was pretty toxic.
Yeah. Have you had any contact with him?
Yeah, we actually emailed because I was like, hey, got a book coming out and I have mentioned your name, so I thought it was polite to let him know. And we had actually a really nice chat because we've both been diagnosed with ADHD. And actually looking back, I can really like understand that how that affected our relationship and our behaviour and our relationship with alcohol. And we shared pictures of our kids, wished each other well. He said, like, good luck with the book. It was actually really nice. It gave me some really nice closure.
I think that's really beautiful and healing.
Yeah, it was like, this is like a therapy session that I really needed.
But also that ability for you both to understand the purpose you served to each other at the time.
Which we can only do now.
Yeah.
Because we're doing our own kind of work on ourselves.
Yeah.
And, it's like 10 years later.
I think there's something incredibly healing about that. I love that idea that people, different times of your life, different relationships serve.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about if there's anyone listening now who's tuned in because they think they have a problem with alcohol and their life feels very out of control, that it's really wonderful to be able to hear from people to say that 10 years in the future, this is what life can look like, and what feels awful now could be quite beautiful and healing.
Yeah, and you'll look back on it and understand why you were in so much pain and why you were acting in that way and why you had the issue with alcohol.
Yeah. You are now married to Hugo.
Yes, we've been married 6 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Hugo, you've written in the book that Hugo said to you, if you don't stop drinking, it's going to end our marriage.
Yes.
How did that feel when he said that?
It felt awful because I was so hungover when he said it, and I was already just so filled with self-loathing because it was after the last time I got really drunk. Mm-hmm. I didn't stop drinking though. It took me about another 5 days of drinking. So it was like so nearly there. But then we were about to go on holiday and I was like, I can't not drink on holiday, which is ridiculous because not drinking on holiday now I think is like the best thing ever because you can properly enjoy it.
Yeah.
But in that headspace I was in, I was like very anxious because I'd got horribly drunk at a wedding. And then we were on holiday a few days later and I was drinking and things were a bit rocky between us. And a couple of days into the holiday, I had a massive panic attack after a night of drinking. Mm. And after that panic attack, we went for a hike. And that's when I said, I need to stop drinking.
And that was that?
Yeah.
Wow.
So he'd given me an ultimatum a few days before. And I wanted to say in that moment, like, I'll stop drinking, like, just for him. But it really had to, like, click into place for me to want it enough for myself, not just to do it for him.
Do you think as well, I really do believe that sometimes things have to get really painful and really bad for us to be able to come out the other side.
You have to have your rock bottom so that then you're really ready to change.
Yeah.
So that was like 2.5 years ago. And it's like the best decision I've ever made. It was ruining my relationship. I mean, I was self-destructing and my behaviour was destructive. I mean, it's very hard to be with a bad drunk. Mm. I'm sure anyone that is struggling with how they use alcohol will find it affects their relationships because you end up saying things you don't mean. Mm-hmm. You end up, it affects everyone differently. For me, I'd actually started to get quite angry and nasty.
I was going to say, you say that the last years of your drinking were filled with an immense rage.
But it wasn't like if I was on a night out that I'd just have been in immense rage with like a stranger. Mm-hmm. It would be kind of at the end of the night and it would be directed at him.
Right.
Probably like when we got home. Mm-hmm. And in the morning I would often not remember what I'd said, but he'd be really upset with me. And I'd just be like, what did I say? When he told me, I'd be like so horrified, the things that I'd said, because they would never things that I would think, let alone say. So it was just like being, just actually being really cruel.
So how old were your kids when you got sober?
They were 6 months and 2.
I mean, I wanted to talk to you about that because you've been really honest and I really, really, I'm so grateful for everything that you've put in this book, Millie, but especially the stuff about early motherhood and that kind of shock of like, you have kids. And I really related to you talking about when you were pregnant, you were like, oh, I don't want to drink.
Yeah. I was like, this is great. I have a reason not to drink and I don't want to drink and I love it.
I don't know about you, but when I was pregnant, it just did not occur to me that I would ever go back to the way I was before. I just assumed that pregnancy was going to do for me what...
I didn't even think about it. It just was like...
I'll be a sophisticated 1 glass a week of red wine drinker.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought that because I never drank red wine.
The occasional glass of rosé.
But then, and you really described this really well, how that kind of shock when you have a baby and then you're like, well, actually, I probably need a few drinks to kind of just remember who I really am.
Mm-hmm. And I deserve it because...
have you seen the day I've had?
Yeah.
And this will get me through bedtime and all this like mad justification we do, right?
I don't know if you had any disastrous nights out with like groups of mums.
I don't think any of the mums that I knew at the time drank as heavily as I did. So it was like I couldn't possibly go out with them because they would have been horrified. But I do also know that there is that kind of thing of mummy gin o'clock wine culture. Do you know what I mean? So tell me about your disastrous nights with mums.
I just remember,
no.
like a night where you would go over to another mum's house. There'd be maybe like 8 of you there, and it would end up being like an episode of like Desperate Housewives of like, Chiswick, like where I'm suddenly
the Real
like
Housewives of Chiswick.
Well, like just because I'd literally suddenly be in a cat fight with some women that I've just met, and
really,
yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And then like trying to get home and like can't get the keys in the lock. Have to wake everyone up, like wake Hugo up, and then the baby wakes up and then you're just like a complete mess.
I remember like going on a night out and then like the next morning having to just pump.
Yeah, the pumping. Or you've forgotten to pump when you should have pumped when you were drinking.
Yeah.
And then so obviously you wake up and you're like really engorged. I had that after the first time I got drunk after I had my first baby, and the pain and like the shame and the pain at the same time.
Yeah.
And I just remember crying on the baby's head and being like, I can't, like just feeding her a bottle and like crying on her head and like pumping and being like, this is awful.
Do you know what, Millie? That's like the most powerful image. And it's one that I think is really important because I've heard it said by other mums that I know through getting sober. One of my best friends in Sobriety, I remember her saying that like she remembers breastfeeding one of her kids and just all she could think about was where she was going to get cocaine. In her case that was in the next drink, and sobbing on the baby's head. Yeah. And I think that, it's really important to talk about those dark moments because you can come through them to the other side. Yeah. But I think the shame of
how can I do this? How could I have acted like this? I need to be responsible for this other human, this baby. Like, it was like, I'm a mother now. How can I act like this?
Also that thing of like this beautiful baby. Why can't this make me stop?
Why hasn't this made me whole and complete and fixed all my problems?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like you've got this miracle baby. For me, it was like having that drink where I'd always had the issue of having one and wanting 100 instantly. Mm-hmm. When I had a baby, that was like, just couldn't get enough. Once I'd had one, it was like suddenly all my problems disappeared and all the like stress I've been carrying, and that one glass of wine, and it was like the best feeling ever. And then you just chase the feeling.
Do you think in a way that having kids, was that the kind of the extra push that you needed?
Yes.
To make you realise you were a bad drunk and you had a problem with alcohol?
I had realised a few years before, actually, when I was maybe the year before I got pregnant, that my drinking and Xanax use were problematic, and I'd actually seen a sober coach for a bit. But then I went, convinced myself after not drinking for like 2 months that I could drink moderately now because I had like learned how to control my drinking. Obviously lies that we tell ourselves, and I'll just have one, or only tequila.
Just a small life tip for anyone listening: if you can't moderate your drinking now, you will never be able to moderate your drinking.
Yeah. When I actually stopped drinking, like for good, at the beginning I did think, once I fix myself, I'll be able to drink again. When now I know everything that alcohol does to the brain and body, why would I want to? I'm genuinely not tempted.
I wondered, how have your friendships changed? You touched on actually your relationship with Hugo. I'm assuming that's got much better.
It's got much better. We both actually did a lot of our own healing and did our own therapy. We did some therapy together, and we both went off and did our own like healing journey so that we could then just be in a better place and we could understand each other. He knows me so well. He literally has known me since I was 16.
But he must be so proud of you as well.
Yeah, at the beginning, I think he didn't really know if I was going to be able to do it. He'd lost faith in, because I'd said so many times, I'm going to stop drinking. Until he saw me do it month by month, I think then slowly he was like, okay, she really means it. It was uncomfortable for a while, I'm honest, because when you're not drinking, there's nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
So all the things that we weren't dealing with in our relationship suddenly were glaringly obvious. So it forced us to then have to do the work,
address that,
and it wasn't just great just because I stopped drinking. Which is, I think, and also my own like stuff, my own personal like mental health stuff
came up.
I thought I was just fixed because I'd stopped drinking. Yeah. I was like, all my problems have gone.
Yeah, no, there's that realisation that alcohol is not the problem. I'm the problem.
Yeah, you're like, oh shit, I haven't even started yet.
What about friendships? Have some of those fallen away and developed new ones, I'm assuming?
Definitely. Some have fallen away, some groups that I felt maybe the kind of like groups you'd meet up with, groups of friends you'd meet up with and everyone would be drinking. I then would find myself not invited on those dinners or nights out, and it did hurt a bit at first, but then I also imagined going sober and realised it wouldn't be fun at all. So I was actually quite delighted to not be invited. But at the beginning it felt like
galling.
A bit of like it felt like uncomfortable. You know, what's that say about me if they don't want me there sober? But it would just be uncomfortable for everyone, I think, because...
What does it say about them that they don't want you there
But people
sober?
don't want someone sober to make it their drinking. You know, it kind of...
Well, but that's an interesting thing, the holding a mirror up. You know, and you make this point in the book very well that if people are uncomfortable with your not drinking, it's probably because it's reflecting something back to them.
And you have to be prepared that even people that you think are your really good friends might be the ones that are actually the most uncomfortable with your decision and might be the ones to actually say, go on, why don't you have a drink?
Yeah.
I had people say things to me like, oh, you're not still doing that sober thing, are you? Come on, just have one cheeky one, won't do any harm. You know, things like that. You're like, won't do any harm.
You have no idea.
You have no fucking idea. So it's a proud moment. Actually, I quite enjoy it now when it makes people uncomfortable.
I know what
That made me sound like a dick, but like, no. And you're like, oh, no, actually, I don't drink. And they're like, oh.
But like, I feel so proud to be a non-drinker.
I feel really proud to say it. But it's interesting to watch people react to it.
I also think people say, people often say to me, what do you say to people when they ask you why you're not drinking? And I say, well, I tell them the truth. I'm an alcoholic. And they go, oh, and that shuts them up pretty quickly.
Yeah, I actually have a drinking problem. And they're like, oh.
I'm a bad drunk.
Here's my book.
Yeah. So what this book is also really good on is just practical tips for getting sober. I mean, there's some really useful tips in the book for like early days, sobriety, how to, things to look out for.
Yeah.
Have a plan.
Always have a plan.
Okay.
Be prepared.
Let's talk firstly about hungry, angry, lonely, tired.
Yeah.
Halt.
So you learn this in AA?
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't allow yourself, guys, to get hungry, angry, lonely or tired.
Yeah. Snacks in the bag.
Yeah.
Friends on speed dial.
Yeah.
Have ways to vent your anger that are healthy, like screaming into a pillow. Running. Running's a good one for me.
I think it is those things, like the really practical things are like, watch out for the little things that can get you, like just try and get a good night's sleep. Try and don't, I always remember someone saying, don't find yourself staring off into the middle distance. Do you know what I mean? Just keep busy. Just keep busy.
Yeah, when you're looking at your like diary and calendar and what you're committing to, especially in those early sobriety days, I think looking at your diary and what you've said yes to or what you're considering going to, like, is this going to be too hard? Is this self-care or is this self-harm?
That's a brilliant question.
And don't have any guilt for not going to something you said you'd go to. Okay, if it's your best mate's wedding, like obviously, you want to be there, but it totally depends what it is. If something's going to be too hard and you think it's going to be the thing that pushes you to drink, then just don't go.
Don't do it. Yeah. And actually a real friend will really understand. Yeah. You talk about also like leaving early.
And I don't tell anyone. I maybe tell like one person.
Is it a French exit?
Yeah.
Is that what they call it?
French
exit. I do that too now. Don't just go.
So, and if it's too uncomfortable to say you're going, just be like, I've just got to answer this call, or I just got to go to the bathroom, and then you just like slip out.
Literally no one notices.
Especially if everyone's already like a couple of drinks in.
Yeah, it's wild to realise, shit, no one is thinking about me.
Yeah, no one cares.
When people say, do you miss going out? I'm like, nope, not at all. I did all the going out I needed to.
Yeah.
I
said that in the book. It's like, I've had all the drinks that you need ever.
The other thing that I really like about the book is like, no one owns sobriety. Like, do it the way that helps you. And I just think the more stuff there is out there about living an alcohol-free life, the better.
Yeah, for me, one of the things I want to do with the book is make sobriety sexy. You're actually present. You're not like slurring your words. You get like your time back.
Yeah.
You have clarity. You wake up every morning remembering.
Not hating yourself.
How you got home.
The amount of time that's freed up by not waking up and going, what the fuck did I do?
Yeah.
And having to go through your phone to see like the receipts.
Just living in like constant fear. I was living in constant fear that there was going to be pat pictures of me wasted, like waiting for a call from my agent to be like, Millie, what the fuck is this? You know, with camera phones, it had happened to me a couple of times. Then every time I was out, if I was drinking in public, I was then terrified the next morning that someone posted evidence of it somewhere.
Paranoia?
Yeah.
Constant?
Constant.
So if someone's listening now, thinking about getting sober and you don't know how to do it, I can't live a life with alcohol, but I also can't live a life without it. That's the jumping off point, isn't it, right?
Yeah.
What would you say to someone like that?
It feels, and for me, and I think for most people, it feels impossible to do all these things and to go to all these events and parties and do it alcohol-free. And it feels so scary. But on the other side of that fear is the most beautiful life. Mm-hmm. And don't wait to do it. It's so easy to think, I've just got this wedding, maybe I'll do it, I'll start after that. Or I've got a holiday, I'll wait till after the holiday. Don't wait. Just jump in the deep end. It's the ultimate like self-love choice to put yourself first and just be like, fuck it, I don't care what anyone else thinks. I'm owning this. This is the best thing for me. And just stop. And I think if it feels too scary to say I'm never drinking again, don't say that to yourself. Say, I'm going to do this for 6 months. Or I don't think a month's enough to really feel all the benefits. But if that feels like safe, then just try it for a month. You're never going to regret not drinking for a month.
But even if that
and then tag on another month and then tag on another month. Take it day by day.
Yeah, that's the thing. Even if it feels, I remember at the beginning of my sobriety, there were times where I was like, I remember someone saying to me, you're just going to do it hour by hour.
Yeah.
Just get to 1 o'clock without having a drink. And then, and it does add up. And then before you know it, it's like, I'll be 8 years, touch wood, this year. And that's like, that's mad to me. That is fucking bonkers that I don't drink. And that, like you, it doesn't occur to me that would be an option for me. Like, I'm just like, no thanks.
Don't try and do it alone. There are so many, like you said, different avenues people can take on a sober journey. Just don't do it on your own. It's too hard. Get support. There's lots of free support groups, whether it's online or whether it's in person or whether seeing a sober coach is accessible to you. That's what I did. And having someone I could speak to who really understood addiction and understood the behaviour and was actually someone that was very hard talking and very, straight talking. That's what I needed. I needed someone to be like, listen, this is going to fuck up your entire life and you need to take this seriously.
Yeah.
And I wanted the hard truth. And I was like, okay, this is horrible and I'm just going to do it.
Also, would you say, I think another really good bit of advice is not to get too obsessed or too bogged down with language.
With labels.
Yeah, people get really obsessed with the kind of alcoholic thing.
Yeah, totally. I think the labels thing is a really big one. Because when I first stopped drinking, I had people say to me, but you don't have a problem. You drank too much and sometimes, it all went a bit wrong, but you didn't have a drinking problem. And because that was being said to me, I really believed that it was too shameful to say, okay, I was an alcoholic or I was an addict. As I started writing the book, and by the time I got to the end, I was like, kind of looks like I have a problem when you write it down. And then I was like, so fucking what if I had a drinking problem? It's actually so liberating just to say, I was a bad drunk. I did have a problem with alcohol. I will always have a problem with alcohol. I can't fix that in me.
Would you describe yourself as an alcoholic or do you not find that a helpful term?
I don't find it a helpful term, but I do find it helpful to think of myself in recovery.
Yeah.
Because then I think you can be kinder to yourself and allow yourself more grace.
Also, you're defining yourself by your wellness rather than your illness.
Love that.
Millie, thank you so much for
that was
everything.
Such a good chat.
When we come to talking about giving up alcohol, we focus so much on the thought of getting rid of something, losing something. But actually what you're doing is making space for something even better. It's not actually about giving something up. It's about getting something back. Well, in some cases, in my case, I was not even getting something back. It's discovering something that was there that I never knew was there, if that makes any sense. Anyway, if you're looking for inspiration or practical advice, Millie's new book, Bad Drunk, How I Found My Freedom from Alcohol, and You Can Too, is a brilliant guide to starting that journey. And it is quite possibly the best title of a sobriety memoir I've ever heard, and I wish I'd come up with it first. If you've been inspired by Millie's story or know someone who might be, please share this episode with them. And while you're here, hit follow and leave us a review. It helps more of you lovely lot discover these important conversations. Take care, be kind to yourself, and I'll catch you on Friday.